Consumption is a luxury. You always see these posts saying, oh, if you bought a house, you'd save money on rent. And then you see other posts saying, if you didn't drink a cup of coffee every day, you'd be able to retire in 10 years. Oftentimes when people do these calculations, they invest in things like an index fund with the extra cash that you would save from not spending money on coffee. But why don't we take it a step further? Why not just buy Starbucks instead? What would happen then? And then what if we did this for a ton of different products that we're all going to check out today, such as what if we invested every month into Netflix instead of buying Netflix? How would that actually affect how much money we have after 10 years? So I actually made a list of 16 different things that a lot of people, in my opinion, waste money on, myself included. And I want to see what would happen if we invested in the actual company that made the product instead of actually consuming the product. So I had a couple of ground rules for a lot of these expenses. I'm only targeting what I consider to be luxuries. So for example, I could put Chipotle on the list, but I'm not going to because Chipotle is food and we need food to eat. I'm not gonna do the difference between like, oh, if you like made your own lunch for $6.79 instead of buying Chipotle for $12. No, we're not gonna do any of that because I wanna see what happens if you just get rid of it completely, because then everyone can start doing this literally tomorrow if you find that it's worth it. To put a more extreme example, we all buy toothpaste every now and then, right? I'm not gonna tell you to not buy toothpaste and invest in some toothpaste company instead. There's only a gray line when you get to phones. So for example, for me, I've had this iPhone for maybe like 4 years now, maybe 3 years. Actually, it might actually be 5 years. I got it for free from work and I just haven't upgraded my phone since. It's not because I don't use Apple products. I'm clearly using an Apple product, but I feel like if you do upgrade your phone periodically, it is a luxury, but I feel like it's, again, the Chipotle example where everyone has a phone nowadays. A lot of people think it's like necessary to live, so I'm not going to include that in these examples. Another challenge is finding a company that's publicly traded, because not everything's publicly traded, but I tried to lean more into those companies. Lastly, for a specific category, I'm going to try to pick the most popular products, but there are some things that kind of prevented me from doing that. For example, there's some stocks that just haven't been out for that long. The whole publicly traded issue is another thing. For example, if we're talking energy drinks, Red Bull's the one that comes up in my mind, but Red Bull's privately owned, so I'll use something like Monster Energy instead. Companies like Spotify has only been public for maybe like 5 years, and I want to look at 10, maybe even 30 years worth of data. So we'll proxy your Spotify membership, maybe into like a YouTube Premium in Google or something like that. It's all approximates. We're just trying to have fun here. Obviously, YouTube Premium hasn't lasted for that long, but we could kind of think about the past performance and think about how it might affect us in the future. We're gonna look at 10 years first, how much you could have saved over 10 years had you invested in the company instead of buying the product. And then for all the companies that have existed for 20 or 30 years, we're gonna go into those as well at the end of the video as a special bonus. So let's just get right into it. We're gonna be starting off with coffee because everyone's always like, oh, like Starbucks, $5 cup of coffee every day, invested whatever, you become a trillionaire in 2 days or whatever they say nowadays. All right, let's take a look. So I'm using the website called Don't Quit Your Day Job. And this website has a ton of useful calculators and I love it. They have one that we're gonna use today called the Stock Total Return and Dividend Reinvestment Calculator. So you enter a date, you put in a stock ticker, you can add in an amount that you want to invest, both a starting amount and a recurring amount and periodic investing. And then it spits out how much money you would have at the end and it calculates your annualized return. So I think this site is super useful. I'll leave a link down in the description below. Been using the site maybe for like almost 10 years now. Holy cow. Incredible website, by the way. So shout out to them. So for Starbucks, we're going to do $5 every single day for 10 years. Sometimes the dates don't always match up because of weekends or whatever, or there's something weird going on with the API, but it's close enough. So in 10 years, if you spent $5 on Starbucks every day, but instead invested it into Starbucks, you would have around $21,000 at an annual return of 10.37%. Okay, that's not bad. In 10 years, is 20K worth a lot if you sacrifice coffee every day? For me, it is. I never really drank coffee, so pretty easy for me. I honestly thought the number would be higher because, again, people always say like if you don't buy coffee, you can buy a house or whatever, but it might take like 20 or 30 years to actually do that, which I'm not saying it's like that's a bad thing. That's actually like a good thing still, but $5 a day equates to around like a little under or around like $1,800 per year. So it definitely is quite a substantial amount if you can cut it out. Next one we have is Monster Energy. This one, if you wait till the end of the video, I'm not baiting you. you'll find something out about Monster Energy that I guarantee maybe like 90% of you wouldn't know about this stock. But looking at the 10-year, Monster Energy costs around $3 when I looked it up. I've never actually bought this, so maybe the convenience stores, they upcharge you, but I just Googled what Monster Energy costs, and they say it's $3 per bottle. So if you drink it every day, I heard some people drink this a lot. I never really got into the energy drink craze, but $3 a day, every single day for 10 years. If you invested in Monster, you'd have around $17,000 at a 15.6% annual return. So the return is higher than what you would have done with Starbucks, but since you only spent $3 every day instead of $5 every day, you end up only saving $17,000. Both of them is like a slightly used car. That's how much both of them cost you so far. So next company we have up is Coca-Cola. I promise you not all of these are going to be drink companies. We're just starting off with all the drinks first, and then we're going to go into some other stuff later, such as all your subscriptions and things like that. So Coca-Cola, can of Coke, it costs like... It's so hard to decide the cost of Coke because we drink Coke in so many different ways. There's a fountain Coke, there's a bottle Coke. You could buy it at like a drugstore for like $3, which is really expensive, or you could get like bulk cans from Costco or something like that. So it's actually I don't know if Costco sells Coca-Cola in bulk. I'm sure they have some similar product though, but essentially a can of Coke, the price varies heavily depending on how and when you buy it. So we're just gonna say $1, and some people do drink sodas every single day. Warren Buffett, let's look it up. He apparently drinks 5 Cokes a day, but I guarantee you this guy buys it from Costco or something like that. Holy cow, I just looked up how much Coca-Cola would cost for me. It's actually pretty expensive. Even when buying in bulk, it's a little under $1, which means that if you ever buy it once outside, not bringing it from home, it's going to cost a lot, because sometimes you'd buy it at a restaurant, it costs like $5-7 or something like that. Wow. Okay, let's go with the $1 average. But Warren Buffett, he might have like $5 or something like that per day. So you're only going to save $3,800 at an 8% return over 10 years. So Coca-Cola addiction, maybe not so bad, maybe because the stock wasn't performing as well. For Warren Buffett, I guess we would like 5 times this amount. That'd be like 20 grand or something like that. Maybe Warren Buffett, man, maybe he should like maybe drink a couple less Cokes, you know? All right, next company we have is Netflix. So this is where things start getting a little more fun. Maybe a little more of the millennials can kind of relate, because millennials and Gen Z, I guess we drink coffee, we drink energy drinks. Okay, maybe we don't drink as much Coca-Cola. For me, I think that's more of like a kid or boomer thing. But I feel like people my age, I don't really know that many people who drink soda outside of alcoholic drinks. So Netflix, it costs $15.50 per month now, and that is for their standard plan. And yes, I get it. I know what people are gonna say. Oh, Netflix was cheaper back in 2003 or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I get it, but if you really want to do out all the manual calculations and set up multiple dates and prices based on whenever they changed it, you are free to do that. But for simplicity's sake, we're just going to do $15.50 per month with the standard plan. So from 2013 to 2023, we're going to get around $5,000 per month at a 20% annual return. Obviously, this is going to be a lot less than some of the other things we've seen. But again, the money that you're actually putting into it, even though the return's a crazy high amount of 20%, you're not going to be spending that much overall in it. So is Netflix worth $5,000? Man, compared to the alternatives of cable, we have to think of that. I'm not going to include stuff like cable because I feel like those are, not many people watching this video are going to have cable. Maybe like some of my friends have it to watch sports, that's about it. But Netflix did reduce the cost of a lot of other forms of similar entertainment, and maybe that has something to give it some value as well. So maybe it is kind of worth the $5,000 because it might save you more later on if you avoid other costs. Next up, we have Google. So Google's going to be our proxy for Spotify, because I really wanted to include Spotify in here, but they IPO'd like 5 years ago. So it's not that much data. I want at least 10 years. So YouTube Premium's a comparable thing. I think like SiriusXM, no one actually uses that, right? Only rental cars do. What else do we have? We have Apple Music. We could use that as a proxy as well, but I'm going to use Google. It's not any sort of like purposely picking Google because it's like a really high or low amount. It's just because like I have YouTube Premium, so maybe I could kind of relate to this pretty strongly. So $14 a month every single month, you're going to have $4,400 at the end of 10 years at an 18.43% annual return. Okay, so for me, I think it's worth it. Music's nice, right? I use it so I could listen to music on my phone, like when I'm out, and you could save stuff on it. No ads is good. No ads when watching YouTube videos, and you could support your favorite creators anyways. It's kind of nice. One way to reduce this, so I'm gonna give you guys some like backdoor tips. If you have friends or family, I know not everyone does, but if you get the family plan, I think it's like 22 or 23 bucks or something like that. But you get like 6 different YouTube premiums. So 23 divided by 6, that's around like a little less than $4. Doesn't make it as bad. $4 per month if you split it among some other people, or just gift it to people and you could feel a little generous for a day. Next up we have is Altria. Altria is going to be a tobacco company. So, man, this one's a little tricky to calculate because I'm not including the health cost increases from smoking. So I'm only including the cost of cigarettes. We're gonna be smoking a pack a day, or we are not. Someone's smoking a pack a day. I hope it's not any of you guys, but apparently average price of a cigarette pack costs $6.43. Around me, it's a little more expensive. I see the things in the back whenever I go to a drugstore or something like that, and it's normally like $7-10 bucks or something, but apparently when I looked up the average price of a pack, it's $6.43, and if you smoke a pack a day, it's gonna cost you $20,000 over 10 years. That's a lot, $20,000, and it's not good for you. And keep in mind, that's at a 4.1%. So at a very low percent, you're still dropping 20 grand on smoking. Like, come on. I know it's hard. I know it's an addiction, but like something's got to be done, you know? All right, next one up we have is ULTA. So ULTA is a little funny. For all the guys out there who don't know what this is, ULTA, you could get like all sorts of beauty products there, all sorts of skincare products, and it's also a salon. So it's like a one-stop shop. Full disclosure, maybe I should be mentioning which stocks I actually own. Out of all the ones we mentioned so far, I only own Google, which I don't really count because it's a proxy for Spotify, and then I also do own ULTA. But getting the cost of how much people spend at ULTA was really difficult to do because from personal first-hand experience from people I know, they spend a lot on getting their nails done, their brows done, their hair done, everything you could think of, not including any of the skincare products, but they're all much higher than what I've found online. But I'll tell you all what I found online. So apparently, in this article, the true cost of beauty, whatever it is, people spend this much money. They approximated it at $313 on beauty for women, and ULTA is mainly frequented by women. And we're gonna reduce it down to $200 because some of it contains stuff like gym membership and things like that. But for makeup, haircuts, moisturizing, skincare, anti-aging products, hair removal. All right, apparently they say this is $91, but I just did the math. It's $128, so I don't know how much I trust this website anymore, but even in their infographic, they have it wrong. They have like 91 a month for women, and then they list something that's like over 100. But apparently just on people's face, it's already at $91. And this doesn't include stuff like doing your brows, your lashes, piercings, any of that. And apparently they say that women spend around $106 per month on gym memberships, classes, supplements, apps, etc. But I'm not going to include the gym expense. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to simplify it a bit. I'm going to take the 313 minus 100, round down to 200, whatever. It's not including stuff like the brows and lashes and things like that, but it's as close as I'm going to get. Feel free to plug in whatever numbers that you want if you want to do this on your own. But at $200 a month, we're going to be at $47,500. Okay. Wow. Maybe get your nails done every other time, like half the frequency. I don't know. For skincare products, it's a little tough. There's a different article. This is from the Frugal Feminista, whatever that is. And low to medium maintenance costs around like $220 per month. Medium maintenance costs $725. And then the monthly beauty price tag for high maintenance is $1,000, like over $1,000 a month. I don't even want to read these numbers, to be honest with y'all. You have this other article that says a woman spends in New York $11 on their face every single day. Here's like the averages for each of the states, I guess. But wow, so our $200 per month number is very low compared to other estimates, because this is just on people's face. So you got to ask yourself, is beauty worth it? I think for some it actually is, to be honest, because there are a lot of benefits to looking better. But I feel like if you are average and makeup makes you like barely above average, maybe not worth it. If you're not good looking and makeup makes you like still not good looking, maybe not worth it. But if you go from like not good looking to average, maybe it's worth it. If you go from like beautiful to like super duper gorgeous, it's probably worth it. But I don't know. It's tough to pay a price on this type of stuff. Like all these designer products, we're not even including all that stuff which comes with the package for like all that other nonsense. But like, holy cow, it's tough. It's tough. I feel like if you're not a model, like you probably shouldn't pay attention that much to beauty, but I'm a guy, so that's incredibly biased. So let's go on into Activision. Guys are stupid too, you know. Playing World of Warcraft, $15 a month. How much is that gonna cost you? Activision obviously didn't always own Blizzard. It was owned by a company called, I believe, Vivendi or something like that before, and it might have gone through a bunch of other different ownerships. Too lazy to backtrack all the different company ownerships that it kind of went through for Blizzard, but let's say you spend $15 a month on video games, and if you just put it into Activision, you'd have $4,000 after 10 years at a 15.69% return. Okay, being a guy is 10 times cheaper apparently if you just play video games. So that's nice to know. That's nice to know. Next one up we have is Marriott. So we're gonna be going into vacations now. So I'm gonna budget out a vacation one time per year, and let's see how much that costs. I'm gonna assume the flight costs $500 round trip, and we're gonna do an airline right after this. And then we're also gonna stay at a place for 5 days, and the room's gonna be around $150 per night. Obviously, some things are much more expensive, some things are cheaper. Sometimes your vacation is going to a friend's house or driving somewhere. But let's just say you spend a little over $1,000, $1,250 per year on vacation, $750 for the hotel, $500 for the flights. And after that, like, you're obviously not including food and stuff, but you always need to eat, so I'm not going to include that. But if you just didn't take vacations, how much money would you save? So once a year, Marriott, over the last 10 years, $750, you're going to be saving around 20 grand after that period of time at a 16.61 return. Not bad. Are vacations worth it? Maybe, if they change your life or something like that. Apparently that happens to some people, but 20 grand, you could save up and go on a mega vacation every 10 years or something, you know? It all depends on your priorities. But I know a lot of people, they take multiple vacations per year, like one every 3 months, and they stay at nicer places. So I could easily multiply this number by like 10. And for those people, that would be around 200 grand after 10 years. All right, next up we have is Southwest Airlines, and we have $500 for the flight, one flight a year. You're going to be saving around $5,000 after 10 years if you don't go on vacations, and that's at an annual return at negative 0.6. So what is the deal with airlines? Okay, I sound like Jerry Seinfeld right now, but the returns are low. There's a reason why Warren Buffett says don't invest in airlines, and he's lost a ton of money in them. So you might argue, why are we using Southwest? Why are we not using Delta? Why are we not using American Airlines? Turns out Southwest is the only airline company that I found, like one of the major ones at least, that have actually not gone bankrupt for a long time. So if you look up the stock for like American Airlines or Delta, you'll see that they like only have data maybe in the past like 5-10 years or something like that, sometimes even like less than that. And it's because they went bankrupt before, and then they had to like redo everything, and then they went public again. So there's a bit of a weird situation going on there, and you can't say like, oh, like Delta's up so much in the past 5 years, because if you invested in Delta like 30 years ago, because we're gonna do the 30-year calculations at the end of the video, you would have gone bankrupt, you know, and then it wouldn't have been worth it. So there is some survivorship bias, which is very important to like kind of know about, but I did my best, you know. I tried to pick companies and like products that people are actually using a lot, and yeah, this is one substitution I made. Southwest, negative 0.6 return. It might seem bad, but it would have been better than Delta or American Airlines depending on the time period. If you combine that $5,000 with the $20,000, it's around like $25,000 after 10 years if you just skip out on vacations. Next one up, we have our newspapers. New York Times. It costs around $17 a week. My mom still has a circulation of it, or whatever it's called. So this one is going to be a little weird in my opinion. When we think of newspapers and then we think of stocks, what's a dying industry? Newspapers, magazines, all that bull crap. But because, okay, they've been growing at 14 or almost 15% for the past 10 years. Isn't that wild? And it turns out if you're able to like be an acquisition target or like pretend to be an acquisition target, because like Jeff Bezos bought like the Washington Post or whatever, it turns out like brainwashing people is worth a lot of money. You could save 20 grand after 10 years of not buying the New York Times. And you could probably run the same simulation with some magazine subscriptions. That'd be kind of interesting to do too. I don't know too many magazines that are public right now. I just looked up the Playboy stock and yeah, they are not doing well. I don't even know if they even have a magazine anymore. Well, like what magazine will we put here? Like, well, it's a popular magazine. Who knows? Next up, we have Amazon. So Amazon, they used to be $79 per month for Prime, or per year, sorry, but now it's $139 per year. Let's see how much this one costs. I do own some Amazon. I think Amazon's great, but you could just not use Prime and wait a little longer for your packages. I don't know how much that's worth to you. I know Prime does a lot of other stuff. Like, for example, I get some free games from Prime. I get some free subscriptions from Prime. It does like have a decent amount of value. I think this is actually pretty valuable, but you could technically cut it out. Let's see. It would cost around $4,000, almost $5,000 after 10 years at a 21.71 return. That's actually not bad. That's not bad. Imagine if you just pay $5,000, but for the next 10 years, you just get things like whatever you want in 2 days that you normally would always buy. It's not bad. Not bad. For me, that seems like it's going to be worth it. All right, next up we have is American Express. So credit cards. So I looked up what the average credit card debt is. Apparently it's 10 grand per person on average. So to approximate some random scenario, let's say someone has $10,000 of credit card debt, and that's something that you hear actually pretty often. It's very sad. And the interest rate is around like 24% or something like that, 24, 25. So we're gonna round down, we're gonna say you're paying $200 a month in interest. I'm only gonna focus on the interest. So if you have invested in American Express over the past 10 years instead of paying interest, you would have made around $42,000 at a 10% annual return, or 10.7. And obviously, if you had enough money to pay off the interest, you would have paid off the interest and like had even more money to invest in American Express. I get it, totally. But so this scenario is a little bit difficult to just shrug off. But the reason why I want to include this is to show how important it is to not be in credit card debt. Obviously, everyone already knows that. I don't know why I have to even say this, but like, that's how much it's costing you. 42K over 10 years, that's an incredible amount. You could have been owning the credit card company instead. All right, next one we have is Microsoft. So we're gonna get into a fun category now. I'm gonna go over some of the stupid expenses that I've had, and well, are they stupid? You'll find out in just a bit. So I have some random subscriptions. Full disclosure, I think on my credit card recently, I have around like $1,500 worth of subscriptions every single month. It's a lot, I know, but a lot of them are for business, so that's how I justify it. Like I have a thumbnail service, I have a lot of server costs because I'm building like a new website, and it's incredibly expensive for that one. I have like my old website that I kind of use, and yeah, there's a bunch of random like things like project management software, all that bull crap. It is necessary because I make the money back from the business, but I just want to see how much it costs. First one we're going to cover is ChatGPT. It costs $20 a month. Microsoft bought them out, and obviously ChatGPT hasn't lasted for that long. So let's just pretend Microsoft will perform around the same in the next 10 years as it had in the past 10 years. I know it's not the best thing to like assume. It's actually a horrible thing to assume. But what do we have to work with? Because ChatGPT hasn't lasted for so long, and I'm questioning whether it's worth it or not. It costs $20 a month. So $20 every month in the past 10 years for Microsoft is going to be around like 10 grand at a 28% return. Holy cow. That's a pretty big return. But does ChatGPT save me, like the premium version, save me 10 grand? It might actually do that. It might actually do that because I use it to help me like do a lot of like coding and math equations and stuff. It's not the best, but it's better than nothing. It might actually be worth the 10 grand. Maybe I'm coping too hard. All right, next one up we have is Adobe. Adobe Creative Cloud costs $55 every single month. Students get it a little cheaper. I think it's $20 a month, but I'm not a student. And then after that, there are a lot of free services you could use instead of Adobe. I use it because my editors use it and I like working with certain editors, and I just have to use Photoshop. I have to use Premiere Pro. But yeah, $55 is very steep considering DaVinci Resolve is free. iMovie is free. iMovie is actually one of my favorite editors. And you could always buy, what's it called, Final Cut or something like that. And that's a very good program as well. And another thing to keep in mind, Adobe used to be much more expensive in the past. The price for Photoshop in 1990 was $900. What the, oh my God. Pretty much throughout the years, it costs anywhere from like $500 to like $1,000, and they come out with a new one maybe like every 2 years or something like that. I don't remember exactly their like update frequency, but wow. If you put it that way, $55 a month, which is around like $600 per year, somewhere around there. Adobe's always cost that much. It's crazy. But with the Creative Cloud, you get some cloud storage, you get all Adobe products. So you get like InDesign, you get a lot of stuff you don't use. But I use Photoshop and Premiere, but there are a lot of good free options out there or much cheaper options. And they're actually better because Adobe, they're just used because everyone uses them for the past 20, 30 years. They're not actually used because they're the best product. But okay, how much am I losing on this? Over 10 years, I'm losing $24,000. Okay, $24,000 at a 24% return. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. How much if I just use DaVinci Resolve and use like Photopea or something like that, I just have this much more money over 10 years. Okay, maybe it's something for me to consider. But again, I think I make the money back because being able to work with certain editors makes my life a ton easier. So that's kind of how I justify the cost. Maybe I'm coping. Let me know down in the comments. Let's start an argument on whether it's worth it or not for me. Because I know some people are gonna say like, oh, I need my Monster Energy every day and that makes me more productive. I already know people are gonna start arguing that. Same with the coffee, same with like the Netflix. They're gonna be like, oh, I would have spent so much on cable instead. But you could also like go outside to have fun or something, or maybe draw something, or like there's a lot of free stuff to watch on YouTube, such as this channel, such as all the other channels. There's a lot of free music to listen to. Some people will say like, oh, I'm addicted to nicotine, which is true. I know an addiction is tough, but like it's costing you. It's costing you. Beauty, okay, people are definitely going to argue a lot about beauty, but I feel like I'm in the right here with the Adobe cost. It saves me so much time and effort just from this product. Like this year alone, I'll probably save like 10 grand, maybe 20 grand worth of time just from having Adobe. So next one up we have is Meta. So no one actually pays for Facebook, but I looked up the average value of customer data to Facebook. Apparently, I think this is lying, but apparently it's $2 per month per user, which I think is pretty low. Maybe they're including all users, not just people in the US, and maybe then I'd believe it a little more. If we just stopped using Facebook and pretended we paid $2 to Facebook every single month, I know we don't, but it's just a fun thing. We're at the fun section now. You would just save like $500 at a 15% return or 16% return. It's not that much if you just don't use Facebook. I don't use it anymore. Actually, I use Facebook for like messaging one person. That's about it. I do use Instagram. I guess you could follow me there if you're bored or something like that. But this was just for Facebook. I guess if we stop using Instagram, I don't know how much the average data is worth per profile on Instagram, but it'd probably be something a little similar. And then the last fun category I want to kind of check out before we do a deep dive into like the 30-year type of stuff and analyzing the total savings of all this other stuff. I want to see what happens if we invested in Berkshire Hathaway instead of putting money into a index fund such as SPY. So who's the best investor of all time in our lifetime? It's Warren Buffett. It's like not even close. Maybe you could say like Renaissance Technology is better, but they don't really do investing. They're more like trading. We can't really invest in Renaissance either. But some dude has a company out there and charges like almost $0 in management fees. Like I think Warren Buffett's salary and like all the management salary is like, it's very low compared to how big the company is. But a company exists where they're like super low management fees and you get access to like probably the best investor of our lifetime. Why are we putting our money into SPY instead of this person? You know, what I like to think about Berkshire Hathaway, it's a little naive, I know, but you're pretty much buying the S&P 500 anyways because he owns so many different companies. But you get even more because he owns all these types of small cap companies, all these tiny businesses. He owns all of that in this company. And you take out a lot of the garbage companies in the S&P 500. So there is a lot of garbage. S&P 500, no one's really like picking what goes in there. It just happens to be whatever the biggest ones are based on like certain criteria. There's some exceptions, of course, if you actually read what's in the S&P 500. But if we're thinking about spending money on investing or just like investing our money, why would we put it into a random index if we could have access to one of the best investors of our time? Granted, keep in mind, the past 10 years for Warren Buffett are probably some of his worst performing years. And he's holding like so much cash in the company that's not invested. So let's keep that in mind before we look at these numbers. So in the past 10 years, if you started with 10 grand in your account and then you invested $1,000 every single month, how much money would you have at the end? You would have around $262,000 at a 12.74%. Again, these are probably some of his worst years, 2013 to 2023. But despite that, 12.74 is very respectable. Let's check out SPY. SPY, same thing, $10,000 starting, $1,000 every month. We are going to have an 11.77 return with around $248,000. So Warren Buffett, you'd have around $14,000 more. Now, I'm not saying go buy Berkshire Hathaway or whatever, but I just don't like the idea of buying the S&P 500. And everyone just says to automatically do it pretty much, because you're really just buying a lot of companies that you just have no clue about. You're doing the same with Berkshire Hathaway, but at least you know who's managing it all. So that's a little difference I have there. So let's do a full-fledged analysis before we dive into the 15-year, 20-year, 30-year stuff. So here's the summary. We have like all the companies here, the cost, the frequency, the stock ticker if you want to look it up, and then we have like the 10-year value if you invested in those companies. And then had you done all that, what would you have had? You'd have $248,000 after 10 years. Okay, let's try to take some stuff out. So let's say you don't have any credit card debt. Let's say that you don't have a New York Times subscription because we're not fucking boomers. Let's say you're a guy, no ULTA. Let's say you don't smoke. Let's say you share either a Netflix, Spotify, YouTube Premium account, but like there are like 10 subscriptions out there for like watching stuff apparently. So let's say you only buy one of them and you share the other 9. So let's get rid of one of those. I don't drink sodas. And choose one, Starbucks or Monster. Some people like coffee, some people like energy drinks. So even after removing all of those, let's say you don't do YouTube, no ChatGPT, Meta doesn't really count, right? But all these other ones, so we have a Starbucks coffee every day. We have one subscription service. We have a little bit of a spending in a video game or like just some random hobby. You could replace it with a hobby. We take a trip once a year and we pay for Amazon Prime. You'd still be saving $58,000, $59,000. I don't know why I'm horrible at rounding in this video, but that's still a fair chunk of change. It's not a house chunk of change, but it's a down payment for a $250,000 property. That's a down payment plus like all the real estate fees approximately. That's pretty damn good. And then had you invested in Berkshire Hathaway instead of SPY, you add 14 grand to that, you'd be at around like $72,000. That's a fair chunk of change if you just give up these things. Like it's actually incredible. And we took out a lot of stuff. And imagine if you had some of the other stuff, you'd be able to save even more money. So for me, I don't drink coffee. I don't drink Monster Energy. I don't drink Coca-Cola. I do pay for YouTube Premium, but I share a Netflix account. Let's pretend that I buy it and I don't share it. I don't smoke. Don't spend any money at ULTA. I do game, but I don't actually spend money in gaming. The only time I've spent money in games recently was when I made a video specifically about spending money opening up loot boxes, but I made the money back on that, so I don't really count that because I would not have done it if not for the video. I do take maybe one vacation a year. I don't have a New York Times. I do have Amazon Prime, but I technically don't pay for it. Let's keep it up there. Don't have credit card debt. I do use ChatGPT. I do use like social media, and I do use like Adobe. So I could potentially save like 73 grand easily. Ooh, that's over 10 years though. But again, most of these are for like work. So if we take out the work stuff, then my brother pays for Amazon. I share some of the subscriptions with my sister. If I just don't take vacations, I'd have like 28 grand if I just didn't do that. Not bad, not bad. Honestly, none of these numbers are that crazy. It's not like some insane amount that you could kind of save up. It's still a decent chunk of change. If you asked me in 10 years if I could have 28K, I'd say yes. But let's get into some of the crazy stuff because some of these over 20 or 30 years are absolutely ridiculous. I like doing 30 years because if you start working at around 25 and retire early at 55, that's a 30-year period. So it's kind of like over your working career, at least a small portion of it. If you work till 65, it's 40 years. You kind of see how much you could have saved if you did this whole method. And I'm also 30, so it's kind of like an easy benchmark for me. I'm like, oh, since I was born, this kind of happened. But Starbucks, we're going to look at that one first. Obviously, inflation is a thing, and probably a cup of coffee did not cost $5 back in 1993. But we're doing the best that we can, you know. We can't actually like have a super exact study because the price fluctuates so much. And also, there is a huge amount of survivorship bias in these calculations, so you do have to keep that in mind. That's why some people like using the S&P 500 instead, because it's just like an easy thing to say. But looking at the specific companies, I think is a little more fun and a little more relevant. So you'd have $935,000 if you invested in Starbucks for 30 years, $5 a day, and that's at an annual return of 17.26%. So isn't that a lot bigger of a number than the 10-year one? The 10-year one we had was $21,000. So $21,000, almost $1 million. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Let's go to the next one, Monster Energy. This is the one that I've been kind of teasing at the start. They only have 28 years worth of data because probably they went public a little later. But what do you guys think the number's going to be? 14, almost $15 million. If you were to ask me what the better performing stock would be over their lifetime, if you invested $1,000 in each company, Monster Energy or Amazon or Apple or anything, and you're telling me the answer is Monster Energy? This isn't a typo, by the way. This isn't like an error in the API. This is a real number, and you can look up how well Monster Energy has been doing. If you just didn't drink Monster Energy since it came out, you'd have $15 million. Now, full disclosure, Monster Energy only existed since 2002. What ended up happening is that they got bought out or merged with another company or something like that, and then they just took over their stock ticker, right, and changed it, whatever. So it's kind of the old data. But Monster Energy started in 2002. So let's see their 2002 to today's performance. Apparently, it was first released in April 2002. I'm not sure exactly what day it is, but let's just say it's on the 1st. You'd have $2 million in 21 years. 21 years, $2 million, 37% annual return. Are you joking right now? That's better than all the other companies we're going to be looking at. Coca-Cola, 1993, $1 a day. I'm going to be pissed off the rest of the video because Monster Energy is so ridiculous. You know what's even more ridiculous about Monster Energy? It's not even the most popular energy drink. Red Bull is, I'm pretty sure. You're second place. It's instead of doing Coca-Cola here, it's me doing Pepsi. That's the equivalent of choosing Monster Energy. And I only chose them because Red Bull is privately owned. But if we put Pepsi here instead of Coca-Cola, I guarantee you tons of people in the comments would be saying why didn't you use Coca-Cola? Because that's the cola brand or whatever. All right. Since 1993, 27 grand, 7.5% annual return. Not that bad, honestly, but obviously the number's a little smaller. Coca-Cola, not that great of returns in a while. Next company we have up is Netflix. So Netflix, we all know as a booming stock since their IPO, but we're going to look at 20 years. I'll do the IPO date right after this, but you'd have $173,000 at a 32% return. So let's use the same date as Monster Energy, and let's see which one did better, because we all know, everyone always talks about Netflix, how it's one of the best performing stocks. I guess this is the first available date that they have data for, and you'd still be doing worse than Monster Energy. How crazy is that? $2 million at 37% return versus $265,000. Obviously, Monster Energy, you spend a lot more on it, but the return is a 5% difference. So it's it shows the power of recurring purchases and how quickly they build up. Obviously, Netflix is also a recurring purchase, but it's a lot less of a dollar amount because it's $15.50 a month versus $3 every day, which per month is around like $90. So it definitely is a lot more expensive, but would you have guessed that the annual return for Monster Energy is that much more? Crazy stuff, crazy stuff. 5%'s a lot. All right, let's go into the next one. We have Google. So Google since 2004, I believe that's the first date available for this like data set, $23,000. Not bad, not bad. Next one up we have is Altria. Since 1993, $500,000 if you just didn't smoke. Crazy stuff, 13% return. ULTA 15 years ago, they weren't public like 20 years ago, so I had to use 15 for this one. You'd have $275,500 if you didn't care about beauty. Activision 1993, this is the first available date, but they IPO'd earlier than that. I'm not sure why it's like that, but it's the best that I can find right now. So $15 a month, you would have $200,000, and that's at a 19% annual return. Marriott since 1993, $300K almost, 13.9%. Southwest, $500 annually, $41,000 over 30 years at a 6% return. Again, airlines getting completely wrecked because airline business is tough. They're one of the few businesses where when they scaled up, their costs got too high. Yeah, airline business, just a tough business to be in for like many, many different reasons. New York Times since 1993, 6.33%. So notice how like in the beginning, I believe in the 10-year period, New York Times was almost 15% returns. And that's because people realize how powerful like influencing people is, right? But from 1993 all the way until like the 2010s, before like social media came out, not that much growth compared to other companies, right? But then once you figure out social media is a very powerful thing, everyone quotes the New York Times, boom, it like shoots up, even though they're selling fewer and fewer newspapers. So imagine if they were not in the newspaper business before, and they're just some website that like had a lot of prestige like it has now, they would have went up probably even more, who knows. But yeah, 6.33% return. Amazon since 1997, I believe that's when they IPO'd. You would have had a 26.66% return, pretty respectable. Amex past 30 years performed at 10.43%. If you had credit card debt for that long, 30 years, damn, that's really rough. You would have lost $451,000, holy cow. Microsoft past 30 years, 17.35%. Adobe, 18.84%, all very respectable, every single company here. Meta past 10 years because they like IPO'd recently, 15.68%. Honestly, I thought it'd be better, but they did have like a very rough couple of years recently. I would know, I'm a Meta owner. It's rough times, rough times. All they're like, yeah, I think they could turn it back though. Next one up we have is Berkshire Hathaway. If you did the same thing, starting with 10 grand and then investing 1,000 every single month, you'd have $2.8 million, 11.13% return. And then for SPY, if you did the same thing as Berkshire Hathaway, you'd have like almost 2 million, 9.43% return. So pretty fun stuff. So what do you think? Are you going to keep using some products? Are you going to start investing in those companies? You could do this for any product. Obviously, like we didn't put Apple there, for example, but we could say like, oh, if you upgrade your phone every 4 years instead of every 2 years, what would happen? Or instead of every year, probably be a ton of money too. So you could do this for anything, whatever you want. I tried to only pick ones that were like easily cuttable in my opinion, and I didn't put any of those in a gray area, but there are a lot more you could add to here that are in a gray area. So it just goes to show like how much people are consuming, and people always are like, oh, I want to like own the means of production or whatever, or like, oh, I'm like renting all this time, why can't I be the landlord? Well, this is your chance to do something very similar. Instead of buying the product, you can be an owner of that company that sells the product. And wow, incredible stuff. Like all these companies, obviously lots of survivorship bias, but like I think on average they're like 15+% return over like the long run, which is actually incredible because people buy them so often and they keep growing and growing and growing. There are a lot of reasons for this. Obviously you can't simplify it to like a couple of sentences, but wow, some mind-blowing stuff. I'll probably do a video on Monster Energy sometime in the future because that is some wild ride. But let me know your thoughts on this video. Should we do some stuff that's similar to this? Do you think not drinking coffee will be able to purchase you a house or at least a down payment? Are those tweets wrong, correct, whatever? Let me know because you got to start cutting some of this stuff if you want to make some money, or just make more money so that you could buy it and invest anyways. Either option works. There's a lot of like YouTube financial influencers or whatever you want to call them, or on TikTok, they're like, oh, instead of saving, just make more money. Gee, why didn't I think of that earlier? Just make more money. So yeah, that's going to be it for me today. I'll see you all next time.